how important is marketing to growing a photography business, and kind of what have you learned about that, from start to now?
Absolutely. So I'm going to talk about marketing the way that I started because I feel like that's really important because it's changed since the years. But
Yeah.
when I first started, there were like the main component, which is what I still ardently believe still to this day, is word of mouth. And so whenever I say word of mouth is the best form of marketing, people always say, yeah, but how do I get people talking about me? So the very first wedding that I photographed was a referral from another photographer. So I was shooting weddings like basically as cheap as they would hire me. And
Yeah.
so there was a girl who contacted me and she says, I have $1,000 for wedding photography. And in Southern California, $1,000 is very, 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 very base. And so kind of talked to her like what she wants and things like that. And so we were able to come to an agreement that I would shoot her wedding and I would be there for 10 hours and an engagement session and have a second shooter there. And I said that would be $1,000. And if she wanted to buy the disc of digital negatives, well, then that was going to be an additional 500. And so she kind of went back to her family. They agreed. And so my very first wedding, I shot for $1,500. Now, I knew that this was an opportunity to, yes, get the ground underneath my feet and move in the direction that I wanted, but I also had to understand that this one wedding, the only wedding I had at this time, was going to be the foundation of how I could then move. Well, lucky for me, she didn't have, 3 or 4 bridesmaids. She had like 12 bridesmaids.
Oh, wow.
So I jokingly call them now like the J-Star Cheer Squad because at the time, I was blogging, and because it was my first wedding, I was just saying like, I'm really nervous to go on the shoot. I hope things go well.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people started reading this, and they were like, really like, okay, she's not trying to be somebody she's not. She's just
Sure.
really saying it for what it is.
Yeah. Yep.
And so these girls started following the story, and then I photographed Christina and Danny's engagement session, and all of their friends were excited. And at the time, it was like MySpace, so the photos were on MySpace.
Nice.
I'm dating myself. I'm bringing my cane right now.
What's MySpace? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'd have a MySpace.
And so, they started sharing that way. And so by the time the wedding came around, all of the girls were really excited to be there and they were really supportive. And then after the wedding, I knew I had an opportunity to not just reach the bride, but to also reach her friends. And so I made sure to include photos of the bridesmaids, and I made a slideshow. And then this slideshow, and I'm going to take a little tangent. If you buy a slideshow software and you pay a one-time fee for it, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Because what you're essentially doing with the slideshow is you're creating a marketing piece. And so the way that I view slideshows is that I am creating a commercial starring my clients for my business. And so my clients essentially become my models, and they're out there. And if I can curate the slideshow nice in such a way that they want to share it with their friends, and then their friends share it with their friends, then that's a total gold mine. So I currently use a slideshow software. I'm not getting paid for the endorsement, but it's a one-time fee and it's very simple. But the thing that I love about it the most is that it's iPad and mobile device friendly. Awesome. So it's soundslides.net, soundslides.net or .com. I don't know.
Awesome.
So I paid a one-time fee. Thanks. I think it's .com or .net, but either way, if you Google Sound Slides, you'll be able to find it. And it's a one-time fee. I host all the slideshows on my server, and I have made years worth of slideshows, and they're just so compelling. So for me, that's the first piece of marketing advice, is that if you're not making slideshows, you're missing out on a very palpable opportunity to create a commercial for your business, paying a one-time fee.
Yeah.
So then, after that, it then becomes empowering your clients to share photos. So I'm a big believer. I no longer have, when I first started my business, I was, burning the images on a disc, and then I was putting them on a USB. But my business has since changed. I now do everything digitally. So I have an online gallery of images that they download at their discretion. But I really do make it a point to upload albums on Facebook. That's huge. I tag my clients. And for them to see an album full dedicated just to their wedding, and it shows up on their feed, it's so powerful within Facebook. Those are two of the biggest components to marketing early on.
Awesome. So for photographers who are kind of just getting into the business, what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that they might make that they just have no idea that they're making the mistake, or something related to marketing? Like, what are some of the marketing mistakes that they might just have no idea they're making and that they should kind of open their eyes about?
Well, we can take this in a couple of different directions. And as people are in the chat room, I really want to address how, what I'm saying to what their needs are specifically. But
Mm-hmm.
if you kind of like misguided attempts at marketing kind of revert back to people, one, not being confident with themselves. It'll be like, oh, once I get that camera, or once I get that lens, once I get these Lightroom presets, then I'll be able to market myself. And I think it's quite the opposite. I actually think that there are things that we believe, that I believed when I first started, that were really important. I believe that if I had the Canon 5D and not the Canon 20D, because the Canon 20D is like what they call a prosumer camera, so it wasn't really, a professional camera, but it was a little bit better than a consumer camera, and I always felt inferior. I felt like guests at weddings had nicer cameras than I did, and they would look at my camera like, oh, what are you shooting with? And I was just like, yeah, well, I left my 5D at home. It's like, what do I say?
Yeah, right.
So, but it was really important. Now, what I want to say to new photographers is, you know how to use your camera far better than the average person, even if that camera is better. So when I think about marketing, my idea always is to build a brand first, because you can always rent a camera and you can always rent a lens, but you can't rent your website, and you can't rent the idea, the embodiment of a brand. So marketing first goes to intangible things: your website, your blog, things that will put an image around you as a photographer, not just about the photographs that you take.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I didn't even really think about that. I mean, because you're basically saying things that I said to myself. So I started with a Nikon D40, and that was like way back when. And I did have people coming up to me and being like,
Oh
"What is that?" Like these huge. It's like Uncle Sam with like this big camera or
yeah,
whatever, and or
And but you
somebody.
know what? But you rocked out those weddings, right?
Oh
Like you
yeah,
did the best you could, and people continued to hire you. And
yeah,
that's the thing that I want
absolutely.
to tell people.
Yeah,
And I'm just like, you own your
yep,
semi-professional gear.
that's
Own
right.
it, rock it.
Okay, so what do you think are some of the most effective ways to market a photography business, right? So we talked about doing the slideshows and having promo pieces, or posting the albums on Facebook, which are awesome. Like those are great. So what are some other ways that you have found that are like the most effective, biggest bang for your buck marketing tips for
Great.
photographers?
And it depends. It really depends on on the market. But so the tip that I'm going to give now, outside of creating slideshows, outside of really leveraging Facebook as a point of creating contact between your clients and relatability with their friends, is two things. One, it's going to be consistency. Consistency in whatever form of online interactions that you're having. So if you've decided to spend a lot of time on Facebook and build your business, then you need to be consistent with that. There's not a good form of like once every 3 days updating your business page, because too much time goes by and then you're not there. Now, if you've decided to use Instagram as a major form, well, then you need to Instagram at least once a day, kind of like putting your marketing and branding your business in that way. So consistency. And this also goes to blogging. And I know that people really aren't like, oh, does blogging really matter? And I actually do believe that while that it's not as relevant as it was, it's still highly relevant for searchability. So consistency is the best form of marketing that you could possibly do. And both Instagram, Facebook, and blogging, it's all free. So that's going to be the biggest bang for your buck. Now I want to talk about a really quick and easy thing that I did a lot during my first year that paid off in dividends. So get a little piece of notepaper. We're going to break it down. It's super easy.
Okay.
So after my first wedding,
Yeah, and so we talked about kind of the fear and the guilt almost that comes with, kind of being a professional photographer and asking for service, for people to pay for your services. Like, what would you say? How would you encourage a photographer that might be dealing with some photographer guilt over charging for their services at all?
Okay. So this is where I'm going to probably be perceived as like a little bit tough, a little rough around the edges. And so if you are offended, forgive me. I blame my law school education. You just tell it how it is. And so when it comes to feeling guilty about getting paid, I'm going to probably have to, by the sake of philosophy, put you in a category of being an amateur.
Yeah.
Professionals don't feel guilty about getting paid for their craft.
Yep.
So I think once you change your mind and you go and you approach it from this idea of I'm providing a service, a good service, and I deliver on all ends, I'm going to be paid for my time, my creativity, and the ultimate end all editing of that. So no, don't feel guilty for getting paid for what you do. Secondly, if you aren't getting paid enough to break even for your time, the investment in your gear, the investment of your website, then you don't necessarily have a career. You have a really expensive hobby.
Yeah.
So in order to move out of that hobby philosophy, then you need to start charging more so that when you're profiting. So if you're profiting, you have a business.
Yeah.
So don't hesitate to move from that amateur hobbyist category into the professional category, and you will be able to sleep wonderfully at night. Know this.
And we just had a question come in. Someone wants to know do you follow up with wedding clients to do family portraits after the fact? Like, how does your relationship with brides look after the wedding?
That's an absolutely wonderful question. I love it. I am a wedding specialist. I'm a boutique luxury wedding photographer. So my clients, as they grow with their families, as much as I would love to document them, and I know that it's, potential form of income, what I am is strictly a wedding photographer. And I made this decision early on in my business because a specialist can charge a premium for the services they provide, the more specialized they are. Yeah. So when somebody comes to my website, as a personal preference, I don't want them to see that I shoot babies, that I shoot families, that I shoot seniors, that I shoot horses, and I shoot weddings. Yeah. Because then I just look like a jack of all trades, right? So when somebody comes to my website, they see she's just a wedding photographer and she will be paid as such. However, if you are in the position where you actually want to work with, engagement session, wedding, babies, and families, I highly encourage photographers to have a website, at least with a landing page, so people can go into different portals. Like you don't want a bride going to a website and seeing a baby or, a family when she's really there just to see your wedding portfolio. Yeah. Better yet, the bigger your business gets and the more money you have, I would highly encourage people to have separate domains. So if I did decide to get into shooting, say, families, I would have jasminestar.com for the bulk of my business, and then I would have Jasmine Star Families. I would have a separate, entirely dedicated site so that people can view me for their specific needs, not like she kind of does everything photographer.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just, thinking about that from a marketing standpoint, that's exactly what any business owner looking for, new customers would want. Like you only want people who actually are potential customers to come and see your product. So yeah, absolutely. if you're throwing all of these different markets onto one site, they're all kind of like, wait, where do I go? What's for me?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh gosh, man, you're totally getting me thinking. That's amazing. I'm even thinking of a couple of photographers I was looking at just today, just kind of browsing around, seeing who's out there. And they, the main picture on their page was this gorgeous newborn picture. I just made me tear up. I've got a little guy at home, so I'm like, oh, I remember when he was that small, but they're all the language was for wedding photography, but the main picture was a baby. Like, oh man, just like missing it. But yeah, that's so easy to have kind of your landing page being,
and you have to think about it. You have to think about it from, the average bride. The average age of a bride is between 23 and 29 years old. This is a fact. So if a 23-year-old is going to your website and she's seeing a picture of a baby, you're totally missing an opportunity to have her land on a page that says, this is for me in this moment.
Yep, absolutely.
And I feel like that's what photographers really need to focus on, is creating differentialities for their specified study and craft of their art.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a couple more questions, but as people have them, you can go ahead and put them in the questions box or in the chat box. Again, there's a little bit of a delay, so if we don't get to it right away, just know that we're seeing it, and you can put those in
Yes,
there.
if people do have questions, I would absolutely love to get them because Kat and I can, have a ball chatting with each other. But this is your chat. This is time for you guys to ask questions specific to you. So please use that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Oh man, it looks like we had a bunch of people just jump on too. So, so if you're
Great.
joining us a little late, should have set a little alarm on your phone, but but go ahead and put any questions that you have in the chat box or in the questions. I think there's even a little like raise your hand. Somebody's like raising their hand to say something, but I don't see any actual questions in there. Oh, hi, there you are, guys. Okay. Oh, somebody wants to know the name of the slideshow service that you use again.
Yeah, it's soundslides.com,
Awesome.
SOUNDSLIDES.com. And I felt like I was on like a national spelling bee. Got nervous. I was like, I'm gonna spell this wrong. Yeah, no, it's a one-time fee, and you get to host the slideshows on your server. So it's fantastic.
Awesome. Somebody also wants to know, do you do any print advertising? If you do, where and kind of what's your strategy behind that?
That's an absolutely fantastic question. The short answer is no, I do not do any sort of print advertising, and no, I don't do any form of advertising online either. And here's why. I started my business with no money, and I had no resources, and I had no connections. And so if I had money when I started my business, I might consider the idea of investing because that's what people do and that's how it works.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you, I have to really consider the way that I like to market to my clients is a way that I like to be marketed to. So for instance, when I buy a magazine, I'm flipping through the magazine to ultimately where I want to go. I'm not flipping at the magazine to look at all the advertisements within that magazine. So if that's how I actually look through a magazine, why would I spend, I think the average rate for a full page ad in a national wedding magazine is anywhere in the ballpark of $8,000 to $9,000. Like I would never spend that amount of money for somebody just to flip that page and you may or may not find me. That's not an effective use of my marketing money.
Yeah.
There's also a very popular wedding site that they do a lot of like online campaigning to photographers, and they say, if you subscribe to us, we will advertise for you in part of our catalog according to a geographic region of your choice. And when I did the math, it was like $300 a month for like a 500 by 500 square advertisement, along with a lot of other photographers who decided to advertise with that site as well. And I'm thinking that is not the best way for a client to really find me and what I do. I kind of believe that the bigger funnel you have in regards to marketing, the more opportunity you have to catch a bridezilla. So I actually keep my marketing funnel pretty tight because I don't really want people looking just for a wedding photographer. I want them to be, one, looking for me as their wedding photographer, but two, or looking for a wedding photographer that has my same style, aesthetic, sensibility. I just don't want to be everybody's wedding photographer. And I think that is actually what helped my business grow so fast because people said, I got her point of view. I know what she does. This is why I want to hire her.
Yeah. And that's so smart. Again, like kind of translating it back to Facebook ads. Like when you start a Facebook ad, one of the biggest mistakes is having too big of an audience. So you are trying to bid against 50 million other people who are trying to get to that same market. So instead, making it super, super targeted and only going after, like I shared this about how you can target profiles based on their actual relationship status. So if you are a wedding photographer, you can have your ad shown to just engaged couples within 30 square miles of the zip code 21075. But like, how much more targeted can you get? So now you're not vying for that marketing space from anybody else, and you are absolutely guaranteed to have potential clients that are in your area and are super, super niche. So, and then you're paying less for them too. Yeah, and you don't have this huge funnel of people just storming down your doors. So someone asked, how do you work with second shooters? Do you go with pros? Do you use amateurs?
Is a great question. So in regards to second shooters, it's very important for me now as it was very important for me when I started, to bring along somebody that I trusted. That was like the most important thing for me. Yes, I wanted them to be skilled, but I also wanted more so to have the ability to trust that they were going to have my back. And so I actually started my business, and my husband and I now run the business together. He is my consistent second shooter. But at the time when I started my business, I was really looking out to other photographers within my area that, one, had my same style, two, charged about the same amount for their weddings, and three, were just overall very nice people to work with. Then I decided, how can I be working with other photographers and not pay them in a way that cut into my profit margin? So I was able to connect with 3 or 4 other photographers, and we traded services. You know, if she had a, we were both at the time, we were both charging around $3,500, and she was charging that same amount. I said, for weddings that I'm not booked, I can shoot with you, and for weddings that you're not booked, you can shoot with me. So instead of paying her a few $100s to shoot, we kind of swapped services, and that was so great for the both of us.
Awesome. That's awesome. And somebody's asking, in order to not be everyone's wedding photographer, do you recommend face-to-face marketing and kind of doing the contract stuff face-to-face, or how do you make sure that you're not everyone's photographer? Kind of the screening process, I guess.
That's great. And I think that that would be the natural inclination, is like, in order for you to think, okay, I'm not going to be everybody's photographer, therefore I must meet everybody face to face. And I went totally the opposite direction. My ideology was that I don't have very much time. At the time, I wasn't a full-time photographer. I had a job. I didn't have the capabilities of meeting with so many different people a lot of different times. So what I did is I did a really heavy online presence of defining who I was. So I would write blog posts about silly things, about my dog, about what I ate for dinner, about where I went shopping, about where we went vacation. I would do the same thing that I do now on my blog. Is now I've kind of shifted a little bit more towards sharing that information on Facebook. So what I want people to do is I want them to have such a clear idea about who I am as a person that they can make a decision about who I am as a photographer. So now if a client decides to meet with me in my studio, they come in and they know very much about me. They know that last weekend I went to Palm Springs with my husband. They know that I have a white dog. They know so many things that all of a sudden I'm no longer the photographer for every person. I'm the photographer who would understand if they have a dog at their wedding. They would understand if they want to go to Hawaii on their honeymoon, because that's where I went on my honeymoon. So anything that you could put out, and a lot of people think like, oh, that's oversharing. Well, if you share in a professional manner, then it really only benefits you 1,000-fold.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, the questions are coming in now. Yay, I'm so glad.
Great,
I think people were having trouble finding that the chat versus question box. So sorry for the confusion, guys. So somebody said this is a big one. So there's a lot of discussion about whether to even give the digital files or not. Kind of what's your thinking on that?
That's a fantastic question. I'm so glad somebody weighed in on that. So here's the thing. I want everybody, again, you guys will actually start seeing a pattern, is that when everybody's taking a conversation in one direction, I actually want to run in the opposite direction, because it makes me a forerunner and it helps me see things from an entirely different perspective. So for me, the question and the conversation isn't, should I give the digital negatives? For me, the conversation is, am I a service-based photographer or am I a product-based photographer? Now, if I am a service-based photographer, then I'm going to be charging a premium for my time and me being there, so that if I include the digital negatives, awesome, you paid me well enough to be there, boo. Now, if I'm a product-based photographer, I might charge a little bit less for my time, but I'm going to charge handsomely for the digital negatives. I will charge handsomely for prints. I will charge handsomely for albums. And so basically, you just have to decide, what kind of business do I want to run? And so at the end of the day, if there's a photographer who charges $3,000 and includes the digital negatives, or there's a photographer that charges $1,500 and charges $500 for an album and $500 for the disc of digital and $500 for this, that's fine. Ultimately, you guys get to where you want to be. It's what kind of business do you want to run? Yeah.
Oh, that is so smart. I've never had anybody really be able to explain that concisely. It's a lot of, well, maybe this and maybe that. So man, thanks for sharing that. That was really awesome.
Well, good.
We have a couple of, someone said, LOL, boo. That's great. So lots of I love you, Jasmines. There's lots of those. So one of the questions was about destination weddings. Do you do destination weddings? And if you do, how does the pricing work? Is it any different structure than your regular packages?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, if you want to get a little bit more information about destination weddings, you can go to my blog. Even just today, I blogged an entry about destination weddings and the things that you could do to actually put yourself in the position to be a prime candidate for them. So yes, about half my weddings are destination. And I love it because I get to travel with my camera, I get to travel with my husband, and it's amazing. However, pricing structure for destination changes actually quite dramatically. I have to realize that when I shoot a wedding locally in Orange County, San Diego, Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, I can get there and back in one day. But if I'm shooting, like in 2 weeks, I'm going to Chicago to shoot a wedding. Now I have to leave on Thursday night because of weather, and then I'm not coming home until Sunday. So which wedding am I more profitable? My Los Angeles wedding or my Chicago wedding? My Los Angeles wedding, because I'm there and done in one day versus 4 days for this wedding.
Yeah.
So I need to charge for the time that I'm away from the studio. And I encourage photographers to charge for that because it sounds glamorous, but it is so hard getting there and coming home. It's exhausting. If you have children, you have to arrange for a babysitter. If you have a dog sitter. You have to have somebody have a house sitter. You have to pay for parking. You have to pay for taxis. All of this stuff really comes into it hurting your bottom dollar.
Yeah.
So the main thing that you want to think about is to charge what you charge for weddings, and then I charge an additional travel fee, and that's just basically money to cover food when we're out on the road, our taxis, not taxis, our taxes for flights and parking, and then I charge for flights, 2 round-trip flights for 2, myself and my second shooter, a hotel room for at least 2 nights. So in Chicago, the bride is flying us there on Thursday, but we get there early Friday morning, and so she's paying for the hotel for 3 nights. The night of Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, because then we leave on Sunday. And she's also paying for our rental car and gas. So there's a lot of other fees that are going into that, and this has just come from experience. I remember at my first destination wedding, I was going to Mexico, and I was so excited, and I was like, no, just pay for us. And all of a sudden I'm realizing, oh, well, all these other costs are associated with us being on the road, and I was not anywhere as profitable. So learn from my mistakes.
That's really good advice. Okay, so we're kind of getting to the top of the hour, so we might go a couple minutes over. I hope everybody can kind of hang out with us. So one of the last questions I had, Jasmine, is if you could go back in time when you first started and kind of sit yourself down, like, this is what you need to know before you take another step, another action down this wedding photography path, like, what would be the advice you would give to yourself?
The advice I would give to myself. So I would look Jasmine Star, in 2006, and I would look at her in the face and I would shake her like wildly because I don't ever listen to good advice. So I would say, look at me, listen and digest what's going on. First and foremost, don't play the short game, play the long game. So the decisions that you make in your business, don't think about, well, will this work next year? I want you to ask yourself, will this work in 5 years? So when you are buying gear, so like a classic example was I bought the Canon 430 EX flash because it was cheaper. It was $200 cheaper than the 580. And my husband said, are you sure you want to make this decision? And I said, I'll be fine. We don't have that extra $200. Well, lo and behold, 4 months later, I was back at the camera store because I realized that my 430 just couldn't do what I needed it to do in the type of photography that I was pursuing. I wasn't playing the long game.
Yeah.
So don't chintz on things because you think I can't afford it now. Think about, you know what, I will be able to afford this in a year from now. And until then, I'm going to rent amazing gear until I've saved up enough to get the gear that I really want to be shooting with.
Yeah, definitely.
Secondly, I would tell myself to take bigger risks. I was so nervous when I started out. I didn't believe in myself. And so I always was like, my worst enemy. I would be like, it's not going to work. You're not going to get this wedding. You're not going to do this. And I think that if you continuously fill your mind with the negativity, that's what your life will manifest. And it wasn't until I started leaving meetings thinking, you know what? I've worked really hard and I put my best foot forward and I believe I'm going to get this wedding. And if I don't get this wedding, then this wedding wasn't destined for me. When I just kind of shifted that perspective was when I was interacting with people, I came across as more confident, I came across as assured, and I came across as a professional. And the last thing that I would tell people to do, a new photographer starting out in that kind of 1 to 3 year range, is don't listen to what other people say. Don't look at what other people are doing. What you need to do in this really precarious time in your business. Do you know that if 10 portrait and wedding photographers that start, there will only be 3 remaining in 4 years. So 7 out of 10 wedding and portrait photographers don't make it to that 3 to 4 year mark. So if that's what's happening, I have to challenge you that during these most fragile times in your business, don't compare yourself to others. Don't look at what other people have, what they are doing, where they are traveling, how cool their Instagram feed is. You need to just focus just on you. Does it sound selfish? Yes. But during this time, you're strengthening your business, you're strengthening your fortitude, and you're strengthening your mindset so that when the tough times do come along, you're not saying, well, they have it better and they have it easier. You're really just saying, you know what? I've worked hard to be here and I'm going to push through.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's so awesome. I already feel encouraged.
Well, good.
Yeah. So, okay. So with the couple minutes we have left, let's talk about the wedding shot list that you have that just came out. So kind of what got you to be like, decide to like sit down and put your wedding shot list out on paper and give it away.
Well, it's really, I think it's very cool. I've been doing I've been doing wedding photography for 9 years. We're going into our 10th year next year. I'm so excited. And in these opportunities, I had the opportunity to travel around the world, around the United States, talking to photographers and asking, what do you want more of? And so as a result, we launched JasmineStarStore.com. And in there are just a few resources for people to have. So it's like, if you have trouble emailing and landing business online, we have email templates. But the shot list came because a couple photographers were like, I really would love to know what type of photographs that you're taking on a wedding day. So then I kind of created this PDF, and it's literally just every single photo I take on a wedding day. It's out there for you. There is an online gallery showcasing real wedding images. I walk you through what all of my bridal prep looks like, my groom prep, what my bride and groom photos look like, family photos, reception, ceremony, cocktail hour. We take you through every single step of the wedding, and it's a lot. It's really beefy. But you know what? If you're going out and you are shooting your first wedding, this is a great way to keep you on task. If you've been shooting for 3, 5, 7 years and you want to say, hey, I should kind of shake things up, like let me see how to approach it differently, it's also there for you as a resource.
Yeah, definitely. And how much is that in your store?
That is $12.99.
That is ridiculous. Okay, so can I just tell you, within 5 minutes of you posting that on your fan page, like I was in your store, I totally bought it. I was like such a fangirl. I was like, I would love to have Jasmine's shot list. That'd be amazing. All right, so I'm gonna put that in. I'm gonna put that in the question box for everybody. So I'm gonna just write a little thing in there.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And somebody wants to know, are you in the wedding photography business for good? Are there any interesting kind of business ventures coming up for you in the near future?
Oh, you know what? When I first started my business, I got to a point where I never ever thought that I would be a full-time wedding photographer, much less being able to have my husband as my business partner, much less being able to travel the world to teach workshops, to shoot weddings. Like, when people ask, are you in it for good? Well, I'm in it for as long as I'm passionate, as long as I'm hungry, but at the same time, I love to shake things up. So, when I was in law school, I never thought I would be a wedding photographer. And now that I'm a wedding photographer, who knows what the future has? But for right now and through 2015, we'd be booking our weddings. So for this moment, I'm definitely a wedding photographer.
That's awesome. Well, we're getting a lot of people just thanking you, Jasmine. I just wanted to thank you for the inspiration. Lots of people just thanking you for coming. I'm going to put up one more training. So this is a 5-figure training on using Facebook ads. So it's called Photography Ad Secrets. And it's basically, I've talked a little bit about some of the strategies like using Facebook ads to go after potential clients based on their relationship status. That's an amazing tool that Facebook now has with their marketing. So I'm going to put that on there. 5-figure photography ad secrets. So you can check the question box for that link right there. Awesome. Oh, somebody wants to know if your husband was a photographer before he jumped in with you. That was like one of the last ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. Actually, my husband and I were not photographers. We're 100% self-taught. Yeah, when I first started wedding photography, I took a little bit of money that I was making at the weddings that I was shooting. I was saving up. I would put 10% of every wedding I shot into a fund that went back to me going to workshops because I obviously didn't know what I was doing. And so I would go to workshops and then I would come home and I would teach my husband what I learned, and he's been my partner in crime ever since. And sometimes I get jealous because his photos are so much better than mine. So, yeah, he's pretty amazing. But no, he was not a photographer before.
That's awesome. All right. Well, we are just a couple minutes over, so we'll respect your time. Thank you so much, Jasmine.
Thank you
Thank you.
guys. Thank you so much for having me. I
Yeah.
totally appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. And we've still got tons of questions. I'm so sorry, guys. We'll write them down, and then maybe just as Jasmine and I are talking, we can put out an email with a couple of follow-ups. So yeah, so thanks, Jasmine, so much. We're just going to kind of let the recording run a little bit for a little bit of a lag, and we'll let everybody kind of put their thanks to you in the question box. So hopefully we'll get to do this again. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye, guys.